Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Atlantic Council Chairman of the Board, Governor John Huntsman.
Thank you, and good evening, distinguished honorees who are backstage here with us. General Brent Scowcroft, former board chair of this great organization, the Atlantic Council, and my predecessor. Dinner co-chairs and members of the Atlantic Council Board and International Advisory Board. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, welcome to the 6th Annual Atlantic Council Global Citizen Awards Dinner. And thank you so very much, all of you, for being with us here tonight. This is really an incredible group. And I have to let you all know it's our largest ever, so you're making a little bit of history tonight. We're proud of that. Each year on the margins of the United Nations General Assembly, the Atlantic Council's Global Citizen Awards shine a light on exceptional individuals who work to improve the state of the world. Our aim is to celebrate these individuals and their incredible work, and through them inspire others to contribute. Seldom has the world been so urgently in need of the sort of leadership we celebrate here tonight. When we gathered at this dinner last year, the world faced a host of challenges that included a resurgent Russia, exerting pressures on Europe's east, and the alarming spread of extremist factions and violence throughout the Middle East and North Africa. 1 year later, we stand witness to the costs of insufficient creativity, action, and common purpose among the United States and its friends and allies around the world. At a time when we are engaged in a new presidential campaign cycle, where it is already abundantly clear that the debate over America's role in the world will be a critical factor, we are confronted with a harsh reality that if we and our friends and allies don't step up, less benevolent actors or chaos will fill the void. So that has made the Atlantic Council's founding purpose, exercised now for more than 55 years, and the Council's current mission more crucial than ever before, working together to secure the future. So tonight we celebrate 4 individuals, but beyond that we celebrate a more fundamental idea that through common purpose and inspired leadership we can navigate our way to a better outcome together. In that spirit, tonight we celebrate Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos for, among other accomplishments, his unwavering commitment to democracy and to ending the armed conflict with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. As we saw, that effort took a giant step forward last week with the announcement of an agreement committing both sides to a definitive peace deal within 6 months. We honor Mario Draghi, the President of the European Central Bank, for his leadership and developing vigorous solutions for the myriad challenges facing Europe and the Eurozone, helping preserve the European Union against the most disruptive consequences of the Euro crisis. We salute legendary artistic director and chief conductor of the Chinese Philharmonic Orchestra, Yulong. Who delivers musical brilliance even as he bridges communities throughout his work within China, across generations, and indeed around the world. And we celebrate our friend Henry Kissinger. Nobel Prize winner, former Secretary of State, and perhaps the premier strategic thinker, author, and policymaker of our times. with our Distinguished Service Award, honoring his lifetime achievements on behalf of the mission that the Atlantic Council represents. So not a bad way to spend a Thursday evening, I'd say, folks. It is my great honor now to invite to the stage the Atlantic Council President and CEO, Mr. Fred Kemp.
Thank you, Governor. It's such an honor to work with you. You embody what the Atlantic Council is all about. You're principled, you're purposeful, you're effective, and you're committed to working in a nonpartisan manner at home and a multilateral manner abroad. Thanks as well to Mary Kay Huntsman for all she does as an Atlantic Council ambassador, and to your enormously talented family and offspring, two of whom are here tonight. Marianne, where are you, Marianne? Marianne, thank you. Concert pianist of remarkable artistry who I saw perform recently in Beijing with Maestro Yulong. You are an incredible talent. And Abby Huntsman, Abby, where are you? Who brings such substance and style to her television and radio work. Please join me as well in welcoming and thanking Victor Chu, remarkable business leader, and the founder of these awards and a member of the Atlantic Council International Advisory Board. You'll hear from him a little bit later on. Thanks to your vision, Victor, we are convening the 6th Annual Global Citizen Awards, which began with the Atlantic Council's wise decision to salute Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, as our inaugural awardee. Professor Schwab, thank you for being here again tonight, and thanks for all you do for the world. As you look around you, you will see a remarkable audience of more than 450 individuals. Among them are heads of state and government, cabinet ministers, global business executives, civil society leaders, and top media. There is even a very large whale suspended above you. But speaking of the top media, I want to make clear to everyone in this room, this whole dinner is on the record. So, Vice President Biden, if there's anything you'd like to announce tonight, you all gather here in a week when the urgency of our mission is in stark relief. We have a refugee crisis of historic dimensions. Ukraine still struggles for its sovereignty, and we're delighted that so many Ukrainian representatives are here tonight. As Europe struggles for a Europe home and free, both against external and internal threats. Russian bombs are falling in Syria. The Taliban advances in Afghanistan as extremism spreads elsewhere. The impact of Pope Francis and President Xi Jinping's visits to the U.S. are still resonating. The community that you all represent offers promise, offers great hope for the future. But there are also significant dangers if we don't work more effectively together to secure the future. And as you heard from Governor Huntsman, that is the purpose, that is the mission that galvanizes all of us at the Atlantic Council. Next week marks the 25th anniversary of German unification, and it's a good time to recall how our common cause resulted in a peaceful and successful end to the Cold War that brought democracy to millions. At a ceremony next week in Washington involving Secretary of State John Kerry and German President Joachim Gauck, the Atlantic Council will transfer a 3-ton piece of Berlin Wall that was given to us as a gift, signed by many of the leaders who helped bring it down, to the State Department's new Diplomacy Museum. Thank you. German Ambassador to the U.S., Peter Wittig, is here tonight. Thank you, Ambassador Wittig, for your leading role in this significant project, which symbolizes for all time how purposeful diplomacy backed with strength and consistency can change the world. In that spirit, let me acknowledge some unique individuals in the audience. First, I salute previous Atlantic Council Award recipients who are here tonight, and please hold your applause until I have named them all. Dr. Henry Kissinger, IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde, Coca-Cola Chief Executive Muhtar Kent, General Brent Scowcroft, former Polish President Alexander Kwasniewski, Professor Klaus Schwab, and of course, Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden. It's wonderful to have you all here tonight, gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome the following sitting and former heads of state and government. In addition to tonight's awardee, President Santos of Colombia and President Kwasniewski, whom I mentioned, please also welcome President Irakli Garibashvili of Georgia, President Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic of Croatia, former Pakistani Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz, former Ukrainian President Viktor Yushchenko. Also welcome Vice Prime Minister of Georgia, Kvirikashvili, the Deputy Prime Minister of Slovakia, Lajcek, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Mali, Diop, the Minister of State of the United Arab Emirates, Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, the Minister of Planning of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Imad Fakhoury, and Princess Firyal Al-Mohammed of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. It is an honor to have you all with us. Finally, let me thank members of our International Advisory Board, the Council's Board of Directors, and the directors of the Atlantic Council's 10 programs and centers, and now a very special salute to my remarkable Executive Vice President Paige Ennis, who produces this and all these great events. This is her last awards dinner as a Council employee, unless you can all convince her during the breaks. She is the best in the business, along with our events director, Julie Varghese, and their can-do team. Please salute Paige and Julie and their teams. Speaking of best in the business, thanks also to Richard Edelman, one of our top board directors, and his media team for their pro bono help again around this event. Thank you, Richard. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden. No man knows better the challenges we face, nor applies more wisdom and skill to addressing them. It's a sign of his understanding of leadership and the challenges leaders face that he wanted to be here tonight to introduce President Santos for his award. During Vice President's 6 full terms in Congress, then Senator Biden provided critical bipartisan leadership to the cause of stopping genocide in the Balkans and bringing former Warsaw Pact countries into NATO, among countless other accomplishments. During his 2 terms as the 47th Vice President of the United States, he has established himself perhaps as the most influential and effective individual to ever hold that office. Sounds like pretty good preparation for other positions. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the 47th Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please sit down. Please, thank you very, very much. You applaud much more, that whale is going to fall out of the sky. Thank you for that gracious introduction. I'm going to begin the way no speaker should, with an apology. I am woefully underdressed, and I apologize. But I had another commitment earlier, and when Adrienne Arsh asked me to do this, I've been deathly afraid of Adrienne my whole life. She's a child compared to me, but her family have been incredibly influential and positive actors in the state of Delaware. I kid her, the reason I got elected, Dr. Kissinger, to the Senate at age 29, her father was the most prominent corporate lawyer in the state of Delaware. And I was a young lawyer who was a councilman. I'm the first United States senator I ever knew. And and her father literally sort of leaned down and gave me the blessing and said, I think he would be a great senator, and endorsed me. And I really mean this. I don't think I would have had a chance had he not been the first consequential, respected figure in the state to endorse me. And so I owe Adrienne a lot because of her family and all the great things she's done. And in this Atlantic Council, along with Governor Huntsman, the chairman, and Fred, CEO, and Adrienne, I want to thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I do have an announcement to make. I am still intimidated by Dr. Kissinger. That has been the way my whole life and my whole adult life. But ladies and gentlemen, to all the honorees tonight, President Draghi, you have an incredibly difficult job you handle with such skill. And I also, Yulong, I was saying that I had a chance to have my picture taken with a peacemaker or a music maker. I chose the music maker. And you bring such joy and to so many people and such pride to your country that it's an honor to be with you as well. And ladies and gentlemen, my deepest congratulations and thanks to the honorees tonight. But tonight, ladies and gentlemen, it's my particular honor to celebrate a dear friend. We've been friends for some time. President Santos has been a man of vision, a man of service, and he has affirmed once and again a man of peace. We go back a long way. When I first visited Colombia in the 90s, and then in 2000 was, as Dr. Kissinger may remember, and Brent Scowcroft and others drafted out of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee a plan called Plan Colombia. Colombia was teetering on the brink of becoming a failed state. The economy was in shambles, the country racked by violence from drug cartels and guerrilla groups and paramilitaries. And the idea of peace in Colombia was almost unthinkable 15 years ago. So the fact that Colombia has come so far, so fast, in such a short time, in the face of such incredible obstacles, is a testament to the commitment of its leaders and the resilience of its people. I was proud, as I said, to be one of the architects of Plan Colombia in the Senate, and to work with my Republican as well as Democratic colleagues. And we knew that it would be a game changer for both our countries if we could help Colombia move beyond the battling cartels to become a strong regional partner. President Santos and his predecessors have heard me say over the last 20 years that I think that Colombia is the keystone to the hemisphere. If this is the first time in any of our lifetimes, you can look at the Western Hemisphere from Canada to the tip of Argentina and Chile and see a hemisphere that is whole and free and democratic and secure. We're not quite there yet, but it's within our reach. And it's within our reach because we have determined men like the man we're going to honor next. But it was the Colombian people who did all the hard work and demanded change. They took ownership of their future, and our contributions to Plan Colombia was only a small fraction of what the Colombian government did and the chances its leaders took. With hard work and unwavering commitment, the people of Colombia have reclaimed their nation. As I said, back those days, I served on the Foreign Relations Committee, and during much of this progress, I can tell you President Santos was there at every step. In the 90s, he was the Minister of Trade, and he helped open up Colombia, the Colombian economy, so the Colombian people could take advantage of new opportunities. As Minister of Finance in the early 2000s, he helped steer Colombia out of the worst recession it went through in 70 years. As the Minister of Defense, he oversaw the rescue of 3 Americans who had been held hostage by the FARC for 5 years. And we were so grateful to President Santos and to President Uribe at the time that the troops who engaged in the rescue and brought our boys home, I had an opportunity to personally thank. Now, as president, he's working to end one of the longest-running conflicts in the world so that the Colombian people can live in greater peace and greater security. So as I said, he's a man of service and a man of peace. And I know he's a man of great vision for the future of his country and the future of Colombia's relationship with the United States. With our bilateral trade agreement, trade between the United States and Colombia has grown by over $40 billion a year. But there's no reason that can't be doubled or even tripled in the near term if Colombia can deliver on the promise of this peace agreement. A Colombia that's at peace is a Colombia that can take full advantage in the use of its land. Farmers can plant their fields without worrying about stepping on landmines. Citizens can pursue their dreams free of the fears of extortion and kidnapping. And as a nation, Colombia can continue and contribute more as we take on the global challenges that impact on our future. I've said many times that Colombia's success is in the overwhelming self-interest of the United States of America. They're already an indispensable partner for us in the Americas, especially in Central America. And I see no limits on what our partnership can accomplish when Colombian citizens are no longer fettered by the violence and strife that continue to exist in some parts. So let me say, as the people of Colombia continue working toward a lasting peace and greater prosperity, the United States will continue to be their strongest ally and their closest friend. So for his vision for our shared future, for his service to the people of Colombia, for his commitment to peace, it's my great honor to be able to present to my friend, President Santos, the Global Citizen Award. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of Colombia.
Good evening to everybody. Mr. Vice President, I want to distinguish also the President of Croatia and the President of Georgia, the President and CEO of the Atlantic Council and the members of the board, fellow honorees, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for your very generous words. You have been a dear friend, personal friend, and a friend of Colombia for many years. You have been a witness to the transformation of our country, and I know that you truly understand how far we have come. It is a real honor for me, in the name of every Colombian, to be here with all of you tonight and to be able to accept this award. The Atlantic Council has had a very positive change over the last decade. It has grown in influence. It's taking on greater and more complex foreign policy challenges. The leadership of Fred Kemps has been present there always. And Latin America is an exciting place with all its variations, with all its problems. The Atlantic Council has been at the forefront of our reality. Thank you, Adrian, for your support. Your work has helped reset the conversation in the hemisphere and across the Atlantic. It was also a stroke of genius to have selected Peter Schechter, who I've known for many, many years, to head the Adrian Hearst Latin American Center. Peter understands the transformation, he knows the transformers, and has the connections to know what is really happening in Latin America, what is happening in my country. We are living, as the Chinese would say, interesting times. As the Vice President said, 15 years ago, we were on the verge of being declared a failed state. We were going through the worst economic crisis of the last 80 to 100 years. And what we have achieved today is the product of the work of many people, but also the results of this special alliance, special friendship that we have always had with the United States. 15 years ago, when we were having those very, very severe problems, the United States gave us a hand. Vice President Biden was there. He was the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. He went with a delegation that was headed by then President Clinton, and it was a bipartisan delegation. It was Democrats and Republicans. The Speaker of the House was there, and both parties told the government, you must make Plan Colombia work. We have invested a great political capital, and we must make this work. That was 15 years ago. Today, we can say that Colombia is heading the pack in terms of economic growth, in terms of social inclusion. Colombia last year was the country that grew the fastest in all of Latin America, the medium and large economies, the country that created more employment, over 3 million new jobs, the country that reduced more poverty and extreme poverty. It's a working democracy, and now we are about to put the cherry on the cake by achieving, thank God, hopefully peace with the FARC after 50 years of war. We've done this. It hasn't been easy. We have had to make big sacrifices, but we have always had the United States on our side and our friends, as the Vice President and friends from both parties, because this Plan Colombia was a bipartisan initiative, and I would say that it's probably the most successful foreign policy bipartisan initiative that the United States has launched in the last 20, 25 years. And we are very grateful, because if we are now close to having peace in our country, it is because the United States has been by our side. We reached an agreement with the FARC last week in Cuba, and this agreement was about the most difficult step, the most difficult decision that any peace process has to take anywhere in the world. The question of where do you draw the line between peace and justice. We came up with a very creative scheme, I think unprecedented in the world. First time that in a peace process, the two parties set up a tribunal, special jurisdiction. There will be no impunity. The most responsible will go through the justice system. And we agreed to have certain points developed after we sign in order to keep the trend, the social inclusion and the economic growth. Colombia, in peace, will be another country. 3 generations have been living in a country at war. Huge, huge costs. Many people don't realize how costly this war has been. More than 7.5 million victims, displaced people over the last years, and to be able to see the future, and hopefully in 6 months we will have a peaceful country. This is something that for us is a real game changer. And again, this is something that we thank the United States for being on our side. And this award only encourages us to continue, because we have a long way to go. If we have reduced poverty by 12% in the last 5 years, we still have a long way to go. We have a long way to go in economic growth, in closing the differences between the rich and the poor, the rich regions and the poor regions. We have a long way to go, but with peace, it will be much easier. And I thank the Atlantic Council. I thank you all in the name of Colombia for this award. We will carry it humbly in our heart, and it will serve as a great encouragement to continue working for our democracy, for freedom, for progress in the region, in the Americas, and for this special relationship which we are proud of between the United States and Colombia. Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage the chairman of the Atlantic Council's International Advisory Board, General Brent Scowcroft.
Mr. Vice President, distinguished honorees, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be here with you. Just a few words about our next honoree. A few years ago, when Bob Gates was Secretary of Defense and getting an award from the Atlantic Council, he looked at the front row, which included President George Bush Sr. and other notables for whom he had worked. He remarked, "Once a staffer, always a staffer." It got a lot of laughs. I should feel the same way introducing Henry Kissinger. It is for me an honor frequently repeated. Though Henry may think of it as my continuing duty after he rescued me from running the White House military office under President Nixon. Anyway, I certainly would have run through all the jokes about Henry Kissinger needing an introduction more than the audience did, and so forth. Henry Kissinger is rightly celebrated for his great strategic mind, his ability to summarize decades, if not centuries of history in a few cogent lines. His book, his latest book, World Order, is an example of this. And his ability to think about contemporary issues in their broader and especially their historical context, coming up with options that few could have imagined in retrospect. He has remained a brilliant force, the likes of which Washington has not seen since he left the State Department 38 years ago. It's unimaginable today that a Secretary of State would concurrently hold the office of Secretary of State and concurrently National Security Advisor. And today, for example, former Secretaries of State actually seek the presidency just to get a meeting in the White House. Seriously, most Secretaries of State, after their period in office, gradually glide into history. Not so Henry. I believe he's better known in the world now than he was when he was Secretary of State. He's as much a person of principle as a person of power, and knows how to blend those two together in their proper proportion. Above all, he's a person of great insight, born of his long life love for his adopted country. And that's not China, Henry. He's a person with few, if any, equals. Now, Henry, you know the drill tonight, the honoree drill well. A famous person is invited to suit up and accept an award, and that's a particularly fancy suit you have on tonight. The organization hopes attendees will contribute a lot of money to attend the dinner and be able to tell their friends, neighbors, colleagues, well, as Henry Kissinger personally told me last night. Ladies and gentlemen, for his lifetime of accomplishments as a statesman, a strategist, a leader, a mentor, and a dear friend, it is my great privilege to present the Atlantic Council's Distinguished Service Award to the 56th Secretary of State and the longest-lived Atlantic Council Board Director, Henry Kissinger. Can you stand on that damn thing? Okay. No, they took it away.
They were negotiating with me whether I should stand on something so that you can see me. Then they took it away because they thought it was beyond my capability to figure it out. It's a great privilege to be here, to be introduced by Brent Scowcroft. He and I were colleagues 40 years ago, and it's dangerous to bring us together because we are like two veterans of the 30 Years' War who keep telling each other stories of our great adventures and the dramatic times through which we lived. And it was a dramatic time. Brent, of course, went on to be security advisor to President Bush and to be one of our great national assets to whom one could always turn in times of crisis. He was kind enough to mention that at one period I was both National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. It was a unique period in American history because never before and never since have relations between the State Department and the White House been as good as they were then. It is, if we want to reflect about the challenges of our time, we can begin by comparing the situation of that period with the world today. Of course, there's some nostalgia for the Cold War when dividing lines were clear and all we had to worry about was the extermination of humanity in a nuclear war. But in those days, borders were relatively well defined. Conflicts were between states, and the complexities of the modern period had not yet appeared. In the present world, the challenge is not disagreements between states, although that still exists, but the emergence of non-governed areas. We have in the Middle East today 4 countries that whose governments are not able to control the territory defined by international law. Would be Libya, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. In those conditions, non-state organizations appear that can reach beyond their geographic locality, but that are not governed by any principle of international law. In fact, many of them pride themselves on a flagrant violation of what the world considers international law. What makes it even more complex is that there are countries that act both as state and as non-state actors. On the one hand, they claim the participation in the United Nations, the attributes of sovereignty, and the general principles of international conduct. On the other, they support non-state organizations that undermine these principles in the various countries. And so we have not only the phenomenon of state against non-state organizations, but of schizophrenic political units that act as both states and non-state organizations. And when one looks at the kaleidoscope that emerges there, sometimes it used to be said, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But in the Middle East today, it's perfectly possible that the enemy of our enemy is also an enemy. And then, so the challenge is how one can distill a concept of order out of this complexity. And of course, the Middle East is not the only unsettled area in the world. The emergence of China, of India, will change the distribution of power in reflecting about international order. So that is the big challenge of our time. When I first became involved in international affairs, the challenge seemed to be how one can prevent a military aggression across a well-defined line in the center of Europe. And in those days, the recovery of Europe and the cooperation with America was considered sufficient to achieve that objective. Since then, Europe has developed in a way that would have been unimaginable 40 years ago. Many countries, and the whole region, have recovered a great degree of economic vitality. And also, the problem of sovereignty and the conflict between countries within Europe has been substantially overcome in a number of important institutions, some of whose representatives will be honored tonight. But there has been a gap between the economic evolution of Europe and the political evolution of Europe. That the unity of Europe that has been achieved in the economic field has not been matched by a parallel development of either the concept or the willingness to develop a political objective. And at the same time, the United States, which was dominant in the immediate post-war period, and which could operate on the principle that many of the problems that were apparent were soluble by American economic and political cooperation, now also has to face the issue of its involvement all over the world. I say all of this, not because I will give you an answer, so don't be terrified that you will be delayed very long from your dinner. But to point out that the Atlantic relationship that was initially developed primarily on military and strategic lines now really has to be extended into a conceptual question. What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to prevent? And what sacrifices are we willing to make? Because great things cannot not be achieved without some sacrifice of the present for the needs of the future. And when we look today at the challenges of immigration, for example, which bring with it humanitarian needs, but also some reflections about the nature of what it's going to become of the civilization that had evolved in Europe and how it can be combined with the influx that it faces and how the conditions can be prevented from which this influx arises. We have one of the examples of the challenge, but also the opportunity of our time. I say this in order to underline why the Atlantic Council remains as important and with a need of even more dynamism than when it was originally founded. I've been told that part of this award is because I'm the longest serving member of the Atlantic Council board. It's terrific to get an award for longevity. And you can only improve on it. So I hope to be back here in future years. When we begin working on the answers to some of these questions. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here.
Please welcome to the stage Atlantic Council International Advisory Board Member and Global Citizen Award Dinner Co-Chair, Victor Chu.
Good evening, good friends of the Atlantic Council community. You must be pretty hungry by now. And I have a prepared text which I'm going to get rid of. I want to add my personal welcome again to the 6th edition of the Global Citizen Awards. I think every year goes by, our community goes from strength to strength. As you know, our awards were inspired by Professor Klaus Schwab's multi-stakeholders concept. And we are very fortunate that Klaus joins us every year, the first time as our inaugural honoree, but since then he has come every year to support us. Our only pity, Klaus, this year is that Hilda is not with us, and I very much hope that you can persuade her to come again next year. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm also delighted that our honorees this year meets the highest standards of global citizenship. People with talents who are willing and able to reach out from the immediate spheres of expertise to help to improve the state of the world and also to promote peace and harmony. Welcome and congratulations to our 3 honorees. I want to thank the co-chairs for this evening for your support. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read out everybody's name individually. May I ask you to be upstanding to be recognized so that we can thank you collectively. All the co-chairs for this evening, please. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, when you leave this evening, you'll have a wonderful gift. As always, is to stimulate our intellectual curiosity and improve our thought process. There will be 2 excellent books, which are the gift. One from Random House is a new book written by Justice Stephen Breyer, who, as you know, is one of the most enlightened members on the US Supreme Court. The book, I think, is called The Court and the World, naming the world, The Court and the World. And I would highly recommend you to read it. It's not like a normal legal textbook. It is quite stimulating about how the court system and the cost challenges are connected with our interconnected world. The second one is another new book from our good friend Ian Bremmer, the president and founder of Eurasia Group, and it's called Superpower: 3 Choices for America's Role in the World. I won't spoil you by this reviewing which option that Ian thinks America should take at the end of his book, but I think Ian is here, and you can always butter him down after dinner and ask him for his advice. Ian, where are you? Please be upstanding to be recognized. Finally, before I stand down, I'd like to make a personal appeal. I think the most pressing global problem of today is, of course, global poverty. The number of refugees dislocated today is larger than those at the end of the Second World War. I think the Atlantic community should take stronger leadership to manage and assist in this challenge. In particular, on this side of the Atlantic, I think we can and should do more. Thank you very much.